What is up? This is your LA in a minute, and I'm here atop Bunker Hill, which is mostly office buildings, high-rises, things of that nature. But a century ago, it was a playground for the wealthy and sophisticated of Los Angeles, with Victorian homes and mansions as far as the eye could see. Yet 30 years later, it was demolished as a symbol for urban blight and decay. So what happened? I want to talk about the story of Bunker Hill. Let's get into it. As the city of Los Angeles developed in the 19th century, what came to be known as Bunker Hill was this large, undeveloped hill that separated the burgeoning downtown area from the rest of the city. In 1867, a wealthy French-Canadian immigrant named Prudent Beaudry purchased the majority of the hill's land, with plans on developing it. Because of the hill's excellent views of the Los Angeles basin and river, Beaudry knew it would make an excellent subdivision. As Beaudry was building the infrastructure for his development, he was naming the streets, one of which was called Bunker Hill Avenue, which would commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Revolutionary War battle that was fought in Boston. That avenue eventually lent its name to the entire hilltop community. Beaudry developed Bunker Hill Avenue as well as the remaining streets on the hilltop with lavish two-story homes, many of them Victorian, that would become famous as homes for the upper-class residents of Los Angeles. To say these homes were opulent would be an understatement. Many had ornate designs, they were in Queen Anne or Eastlake style, and they were, for all intents and purposes, mansions for the wealthy residents of Los Angeles. The topography of the hill allowed these wealthy residents to escape from the hustle and bustle of the developing city below. Horse carriages were soon introduced to Bunker Hill, but residents needed a more efficient way to go to downtown to do their shopping and commerce. That was soon remedied as Angel's Flight opened on December 31st, 1901, which was the world's shortest railway, which would take residents up and down on its 33% grade. The elite of Los Angeles can now do their shopping at the exclusive stores and nascent Grand Central Market with ease and convenience. And Bunker Hill maintained this era of exclusivity through the 1920s and 30s. Bunker Hill retained its exclusive character through World War I, but as the railway grew and freeways began to develop, people started to leave the neighborhood. Some homes fell into neglect and disarray. Houses were subdivided to accommodate renters. And crime and blight began to take over the neighborhood. Once grand mansions of Bunker Hill were now home to impoverished pensioners, and the population of the hill increased 19%, most of whom were now low-income residents. In 1955, Los Angeles city planners decided that Bunker Hill required a massive slum clearance project. The LAPD called the area a high-frequency crime area, and the Health Department of Los Angeles called the area a health hazard for the city. Though still a grand neighborhood, the government had a plan. They would acquire every property on Bunker Hill through eminent domain, demolish everything in sight, and then turn the land over to private developers. This even included the displacement of the elderly and certain immigrants that lived in the area. After a 10-year clearance and demolition project, the last Victorian mansions off Bunker Hill were carted off to go to Heritage Square, where they would stand until they burned down. But the rebuild was underway and skyscrapers began to be erected on what was formerly a residential area. But the rebuild would be a very slow process, as buildings would only go up once every couple years or so. Angel's Flight was even dismantled during the process. But that said, tunnels opened new areas of the city and palaces of art, such as the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, began to emerge. And though development was moving along, it still was a very slow process as large areas were left undeveloped. Construction continued well into the 21st century. And even fully constructed today, Bunker Hill is a neighborhood, just of a completely different kind. A long way removed from its days as a wealthy enclave and neighborhood in Los Angeles. A huge thank you to Nathan Marsack, who inspired this piece with this awesome book, Bunker Hill, Los Angeles. Get it, it's on Amazon. Additional freeway expansion after World War II continued to change the complexion of the neighborhood. So Bunker Hill still exists and it's still wealthy, albeit in a completely different way. But at one point, Bunker Hill was the heart and soul of Los Angeles, and at least Angel's Flight still exists. All right, LA, it's been a minute.